Well, you know, it is a rather unique set of circumstances, isn't it, to be with you today, less than 24 hours after the President announced that we made good on President Bush's commitment to bring bin Laden to justice. I can recall President Bush took a little heat at. Come on, you better stand over next to me.
I'm getting the signals.
Yeah. It's a photo op. Remember President Bush, some people said was kind of harsh when he said, "I don't care, dead or alive." And special operations made sure exactly how that worked out. But I think it's a gratifying time in American history, but it's also a sobering time. And I really do think we need to understand that. Gratifying in the sense that the country, through two presidents, a Republican and a Democrat, made a commitment to bring some kind of closure to the pain and suffering endured by nearly 3,000 families who were victims on 9/11. Gratifying, we have a lot of Gold Star mothers out there. For those of you who don't know what a Gold Star mother is, that's a expression and a appellation used for those moms who've lost sons and daughters in war. And it's gratifying, hopefully, that maybe those who've lost their lives in pursuit of bin Laden in this war on terror, whether in Afghanistan or Iraq, feel that their son or daughter didn't die in vain. There's some gratification for those men and women who come back injured, psychologically, physically. It's gratifying that America kept its word. It's gratifying that we've got an intelligence and a military community that never lost sight of the ultimate objective. He was public enemy number one. He was the face of global terrorism. And we did exactly what President Bush promised, and under President Obama, our military and intelligence community delivered. We brought him to justice. You know, it's gratifying, I was just on the phone that when he was taken aboard the Carl Vinson, the aircraft carrier, that he was treated with respect and dignity appropriate to those who of his religion, in terms of how they prepared him for burial, to the readings prior to his burial. It's gratifying to know that we afforded him greater respect and appreciation of the diversity of religion than he showed thousands and thousands of people that he buried under rubble around the world. It's gratifying to know that maybe the rest of the world now understands that America's reach is global, and when we make a commitment, we keep it. It's sobering too, ladies and gentlemen. Bin Laden's been terminated, but not the flawed ideology that he embraced. So let's be gratified. Let's feel good to the extent that we can feel good about promises made and promises kept, and hopefully a diminution of some of the pain and sorrow and suffering of some of these families. But let's remind ourselves that we're still going to be confronted over the years, if not decades ahead, with those who still embrace that mindset, that flawed belief system. And I don't think you have to think more than your own reading in the newspaper, watching TV the past year. People were worried about retaliation. It's not retaliation. We've been under attack even before 9/11. Don't forget there was an embassy bombing in Kenya in 1998. 200 plus people, including Kenyans, were killed. Don't forget the first attack on the Trade Center. Don't forget the attack on Cole. And then flash forward to 2001, and just remember what's happened the past year. Fort Hood, Detroit, New York City. So it's a global scourge. We're going to be at this for some time, but credit goes to thousands and thousands of men and women. Thousands and thousands, not just the political leaders. They did the right thing by making the commitment. You know who executes on the commitment? The intel community and the men and women in the military. And they've both done a remarkable job. I must tell you, I called a special friend of mine who was a SEAL, had been over in Iraq and Afghanistan. I thought I might be able to extract a few things from him, David, that I could share with your audience, but he doesn't know too much now. He does think he knows a couple members of the team. He said his only regret is that, I said, as soon as I heard this, I thought of you. He said, I was thinking how you would probably want to be leading that team. He said, yep, you're absolutely right. And I said, I must tell you, there are a lot of people wishing they could have pulled the trigger. But that's the end of a gratifying and sobering day. Justice triumphs over brutality. It's all about thousands of men and women who stood up to serve. And that's why we kind of get together tonight. Got an incredibly fine individual who wants to serve his community, who frankly, I remember my good friend Jack Kemp, God rest his soul. Jack had a wonderful expression. David and I have talked about this over the years. Jack once said to me, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. So it's not about throwing out a bunch of degrees. It's not about telling everybody I'm a successful lawyer. It's not about this. It's not about that. It's about I've been involved in my community for decades. My father was involved in the community for decades. The apple doesn't fall from the tree. I mean, I looked at David's career and I'm thinking, boy, I tell you what, the icon that helped shape him and form him and develop that value system was his dad. I felt a kinship with you, and you're talking about the same father. Your commitment to service in your broader community, not only the Asian American community, but the Philadelphia community is legion. You were reaching out to provide services to the underprivileged and disadvantaged legally before you were assistant DA, while you were assistant DA, since that time. So it takes a special person, I think, who's willing to take on the role and responsibility of local government. It's a tough job, where the rubber meets the road. I've often thought that the folks in Washington, and I can say this because I was there for 12 years, they don't quite get it. It's the states and the local elected officials that actually see the customers. We actually see the people in need. We see the people that pay taxes. You run them into going to church, you run them into going to walking down the street, going into the office building. And so I think his endorsement by the Republican committee certainly got me here, but my friendship with him would have gotten me here anyhow. David is, I think, the kind of man that Bob Asher so effectively pointed out and personally pointed out. Great faith in his community. Great belief in his ability to make a difference. With that, he brings an enthusiasm, an intellect, an energy, and a commitment to service. Frankly, that I think has been demonstrated by the fact that this is the third time he's put his name before the voters. You know, and I don't think you run away from that. By the way, I think someone once told me that Abraham Lincoln lost about 6 or 7 elections before he won his first one. So I'm not announcing your candidate for presidency. You still have a couple more to get through. But the bottom line is I think that not only speaks to resilience, but also a commitment and a will to serve. Commitment and a will to serve. So it's a great pleasure to introduce to you, with your help. And by the way, let me put a plug in here. This is a turnout election. You know, long before I got into politics, I was involved in grassroots politics. You know what's going to make the difference? Your vote's going to make the difference. You partnered with your treasurer to be here tonight. That makes a difference. But you know what you got to do on election day? You got to get people to the polls. We know turnout's going to be fairly low. And whatever you can do, your family, your friends, your coworkers, if you got to take them to the polls, take them to the polls. If you believe in David, you believe in taking a little extra time to serve him in that capacity. And you do that, you will be well served with his energy, his leadership, and his integrity on City Council. So it's a great pleasure for me to introduce to people to whom he needs no introduction, but since I'm his brother, that's what I've been asked to do. David O. David?